The following is a fan-made review show. These are not official reviews, nor commissioned, nor monetized videos. All works are featured on this channel are properties of their respective owners. Please support the official releases. I might as well just drop this here before the review even begins. This is not the type of review you expect from me. It's not going to be me cursing and screaming as much as I would like, because the subject matter at hand is rather complex in both its story, and even more so with the problems I feel the series creates for itself. There's no half-assing this one, trying to make it comedic. I want this review to be as informative as possible without being generalized or overly complex. I should also note that I'm judging the anime as a whole, and this in no way represents my thoughts on the visual novel, as I have not played them. I just want to give you guys some understanding where I'm coming from with this review, and it comes from the very Higurashi fanboy within me, and I hope you understand where I'm coming from. With that said, we can carry on through the review. Hello, I'm the Gorehound. I review the bloodiest things I get my hands on, and boy, you're in for a demented and violent treat today as I review the spiritual successor of Higurashi, Umineko no Naku Koro ni. Much like its predecessor, it was a visual novel created by the mastermind of the whole series, Ryukishi7, who made it very clear with his other works with Higurashi and Higurashi Kai that the murder mystery genre was serious business and pushed out the first Umineko visual novel in 2007, shortly after the release of the Higurashi Kai anime through the 7th expansion. The game was well received enough to warrant sequels in the form of arcs, much like Higurashi, and to date there are 8 complete canon titles to complete a storyline through question and answer arcs, titled Umineko and Umineko Chiro respectively, much like Higurashi and Higurashi Kai. Now where does the show come in? Well, the show was released on July 2nd, 2009, and boy did it fail to attract the attention and praise Higurashi did. Audiences and fans of the show alike thought the show was very keen on rehashing the Higurashi formula by reusing a variety of plot elements, and by attempting to recreate fan-favorite characters like Rena, which ultimately led to its disapproval among fans. Now, do I follow this crowd? Kinda hard for me to say, or even to decide for that matter. I love Higurashi, and while it's one of my favorite series of all time, calling out Umineko and saying it's a complete waste of time as some fans are putting it, it's kinda selling it short. It has a fully realized story and some great concepts to go along with it, but in the way it's presented in the anime, it isn't as engaging as Higurashi. But enough about my opinion. What's the story? The year is 1986, and the Yoshimiya family has come to the family's secluded island to settle their affairs with their father, Kinzo, who is near death. His family members arrive to discuss how Kinzo's assets will be divided once he's dead. After the family arrives, a typhoon traps them on the island, and shortly afterwards, people start dying in odd and mysterious ways. How, you may ask? Well, through the power of magic of the endless witch herself, Beatrice, for her own sadistic pleasure. That's because Kinzo offered up his entire family as a sacrifice to her. That's until Battler, a teenage grandchild of Kinzo, engages Beatrice in a battle of wits. Convinced his magic does not exist, Battler must now take part of a twisted mind game in which he has to prove that the atrocities Beatrice has committed could be done without the use of magic. With the lives of his entire family in the balance, Battler must now fight for his life and save himself and his family from an endless cycle of death. And as an added obstacle, 2 other witches are fighting over the title of the most powerful witch in existence, using Battler and Beatrice as pawns in a game of their own, in which the winner shall be granted the prestigious title. So they use their powers to toy with Battler and Beatrice however they can to better the odds in their favor, all the while Battler's game with Beatrice is undergoing unbeknownst to them. I think you can figure out a key issue with the show as a whole, and that is its plot is a convoluted clusterfuck. I mean, I get that the show is trying to be big, epic, and grand, but there's such a thing as trying too hard. I mean, the show pulls at least 8 different plot twists at us, and I would debate that only one of them is legitimately effective. Even for a 26 episode anime, this is too much plot for the show to even handle, and even how the show is even structured, the massive plot barely even comes to fruition. Each arc is roughly 5 to 8 episodes in length, and in those episodes, they had to condense the plot of 4 fully fleshed out games in the amount of time it would take to normally set up and conclude an arc in Higurashi. I'm constantly making comparisons to Higurashi, and can you really blame me? While Umineko holds some liberties with the use of magic, some of the characters are carbon copies of their Higurashi counterparts, which in of itself wouldn't be a bad thing if it weren't for a single mind-blowing revelation that I had to get out of the way before I derail my review because it's curiously debatable. This revelation is for the hardcore of the hardcore Higurashi audience. What do I mean by that? I mean that you watched the first 2 seasons, stuck around for the 2 OVAs, read the manga, and possibly even played the games. So, without further ado, well, it's not referenced, but rather implied, Birkenstell and Lambda Delta bear an awfully close resemblance to an older, mature Rika and a young Miya Takano, and that the entire Higurashi series is a witch battle between Birkenstell and Lambda Delta about who's the most powerful witch. To imply this further, Birkenstell and Lambda Delta's powers are polar opposites. Birkenstell, known as the Witch of Miracles, can use her power called the Magic of Miracles, allowing her to reset a disparate situation as long as the probability of a favorable situation isn't equal to 0. And Lambda Delta is known as the Witch of the Absolute. Her power, the Magic of Certainty, allows her to kill anyone without fail as an absolute result. Apparently this theory is canon in the visual novel, and having not played the game leaves me at a disadvantage of confirming it, so I'll leave it at that. When I said that only the hardcore fans would appreciate this revelation, I meant it. It's downright obscure to the American audience. The first season of Higurashi only got a limited run on DVD after Genyan died, and until Funimation came in and bought the rights to the show. In 2009, Funimation outright said they wanted nothing to do with anything Higurashi related due to the low sales, and ever since then, Higurashi has been a rare collector's item on eBay. That meant for a while there were no official plans to release Higurashi Kai or Umineko in North America. However, in 2012, Umineko got licensed to NIS America to release in December. Okay, that's great, but where's Higurashi Kai? Truth is, I have no fucking idea, and until that day comes when Higurashi Kai and Higurashi get renewed licensing, will be the day that Higurashi fan community will rejoice and celebrate as they're able to experience the full story the way it was originally intended. See what I did there? I went on a tangent. Told you that would derail the review. Now, with that out of the way, time for me to discuss what I feel hinders Umineko the most. The use of magic. Now this sounds ludicrous, especially when the show in question thrives on magic in order to sustain its plot. And I figure that's also kind of the problem. Again, going back to Higurashi, the majority of the show takes place in a very grounded reality that leaves room for supernatural theories to sink in, even though they can be proven wrong as well as being theorized to be correct. With Umineko, the theories of the supernatural are encouraged more so than logical deductions. Why do I take such an offense with this idea? Well, because the anime takes liberty from Agatha Christie's mystery novel classic And Then There Were None. From the secluded island, the victims, the plaque predicting the deaths in the hall and poetry, and the weather conditions that leave them all stranded, it's all familiar territory. This wouldn't be a problem, but the show kinda shoots itself in the foot here. Since its cast of characters is vast, being one of that of 18 characters, we never really care for them. All the characters are given generic personalities and nothing of substance, meaning that we lack any investment in them and don't really care whether or not they see them die over and over again. The novel I brought up has a cast of 10 characters with fully fleshed out backstories, which are so detailed they can be worthy of character study, and they are. So when I find out one of them dies, I feel bad for them. In Umineko, however, all the characters are cannon fodder to further pad out its 26 episode runtime. Not to mention that the fact that the novel takes place in the fantastical realm of reality, magic doesn't even take part in said book, or mentioned, or acknowledged. So by all intents and purposes, the show is paying a very unfaithful tribute to its influences. Not only that, it's through the use of magic that the show loses any sense of thrills, or suspense for that matter, because if a certain situation cannot be explained, they simply just pull up the magic card. To me, magic seems like a cheap way out from explaining something in greater detail, which is something the show doesn't do very well amongst lengthy banter between characters. This makes for a very one-sided fight between Balor and Beatrice, because you know what's pulling the strings. You know nothing you can say can be proven without the use of magic, and I guess that's kind of the point for Balor to overcome adversity, but honestly, how can an 18-year-old Ace Attorney game reject triumph over the magical minds of century-old witches? The show actually goes this direction towards the end, but it raises more questions than it does answers, and leaves us on a cliffhanger with a sequel that was never animated and carried over to the visual novels. It comes off as too little too late. Remember what I said at the beginning of the review that the magic kind of lent itself more to comedy opposed to the serious threat I'm supposed to take it as? Well, it's for those reasons I stated before, and countless others really, that render the threat of magic nothing more than a joke to me. I honestly can't take this concept of magic being used as a threat seriously. I'm sorry, but when you show me a witch conjuring up a cake from the sky to crush a mother and her daughter, only to revive them minutes later to drown them in jello, you're giving me mixed emotions. Am I supposed to laugh at this or be genuinely horrified? I'm sorry, but you've lost me. Well, not entirely. I will give credit where credit is due. And this anime is violent as fuck. The magic aspect makes for some truly unique and often violent scenarios, and for the most part they're fun to watch, if only to see how absurdly gory it can get. Not only that, but the animes have some really slick artwork which really contemplates the violence, especially when you see brain matter splattering everywhere and cookies and treats stuffed in the chests of family members. It's going to sound like I'm going to be complaining about the violence, but rest assured you that's not the case when I say that the violence feels out of place for a while once the series starts off as a murder mystery. Only when it ultimately evolves into a demented mind game, the violence becomes more rewarding and more entertaining to watch for sadistic gorehounds such as myself. So much so, for a very, very, very long time, the show remained censored and for most audiences, and some people never even saw the uncensored cuts of the show. Especially if you live in America or Canada, you would have to import that Japanese Blu-ray over to the States or to your province, which is a hefty price to pay just to see a show. And either that, you either have to wait for the fan subs or wait for the legitimate copy. The legitimate copy was never going to happen until now because Funimation, they fucked up. They refused to put out anything Higurashi related, anything after 2009 because of the poor sales of the first season. Thankfully, NIS America stepped up to the plate, they acquired the rights to it, and for that, they have my thanks. As for the second season that never came to be, there are many possible speculations to why this wasn't made, and at the end of the day, I think it came down to poor reception of the show during its original airtime. Fans of the visual novel were disappointed that they left out some key and important information that would have benefited newcomers, and angry that they cut out important plot points and characters completely. Regardless of the standpoint, those who came into the show blind ultimately suffered. If they wanted to continue the story, they would have to buy the games to get the full story, as at the time of release, the visual novel was already on its second answer arc. This is very unjust and unfair, especially to American audiences, who up to now are going to be completely lost in figuring out what Umineko is a part of and what it ultimately stands for, unless they follow the Higurashi shows and imported the Umineko games from Japan, which is a heavy cross to bear for any consumer willing to invest their time into the fantastical world of the One Day Cry franchise. Now after I quite tore the series a new asshole, I still appreciate it. It vastly expands on the world of Higurashi and When They Cry as a whole, and honestly, it brought something new to the table rather than bringing itself down to fan service with every passing installment. But liking and appreciation are two entirely different things. I want to love this show. Seriously, I do. Higurashi is one of my favorite shows of all time, and Umineko is just an extension of that. It has everything Higurashi had, and more, so why don't I like it as much? I think it played too much like its predecessor, rather than forming its own unique identity, and for that, the show went into several different directions, most of which fell flat since it was a very rushed production story-wise. I can tell they were trying to tell as much story as humanly possible here, but it ultimately failed to deliver the fully fleshed out storylines of its predecessors. I hate to say this because I think it contradicts everything I stand for, but in this case, I'll make an exception. Less is more. I'm the Gorehound. I review the bloodiest things I get my hands on, and join me next time when I review the live-action Higurashi movie. Until then, I'll see you sick fuckers next time.